Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. You're very good to take time out of your busy schedules and busy lives. I'm Óran O'Neill, and I'm a trustee of the Audio Description Association, and Veronica Hicks is with me here as well. Veronica is also a trustee and a well-renowned audio describer. I'm here in Ireland, in Dublin, and I'm an audio description specialist. I'm both a producer of audio description and a user of audio description. I've been blind since 2009. Hopefully, you have watched some of the material that we asked you to before coming here. We can't wait to hear your views. We're hoping that this will be mostly user-led. Also, in the background is my darling wife, Clodagh, who is monitoring things tonight. She's doing the recording and she's also looking at questions, and she's going to run a poll for us. Saying that, we're going to go to the first question, and hopefully you will all be able to answer this. It's not a trick question or anything, but we've just got 3 questions tonight. Just the first one that Claude is going to put up is just in relation to the media that we asked you to have a look at before you came here tonight. EastEnders, Bridgerton, The Night Manager, and Missing You. We just want to figure out how many of you actually managed to watch some of that content, whether it was just one episode or multiple episodes. So I'm going to ask Clodagh if you can put up that question. That would be fantastic. And if you are using a screen reader, like I am, what you need to do is you can just tab to where you hear the question itself, and then you can tab along using the tab key on your keyboard to the available options, which in this case are EastEnders, Bridgerton, Missing You, and The Night Manager. So you can check the checkbox beside all of them, or one of them, or none of them as you go along. And then you hit the submit button. And again, that's all done by just using the tab key on a keyboard.
Okay, so at the moment, both participants watched Bridgerton, both watched The Night Manager, and one watched Missing You. Nobody watched EastEnders.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for answering those questions. That's brilliant. Okay, so we'll just talk to Veronica. Can you just talk to us a little bit about, the reason we're here tonight, as I say, is to talk about, get as much feedback from people about good and bad audio description, and what they're watching and what they feel is good and bad about the audio description that's being provided either on streaming or on linear at the moment. Why do you think we need good audio description?
Why do we need good audio description? Well, it depends on what you want to get out of audio description. If it is purely just to know the fact that of who is on the screen and what are they doing, which is kind of a lot of what AD is like now, then it's enough for you. But if, for example, you're looking at Bridgerton, which is a period piece, so I mean it's very modern, but it's a period piece, and so there's a lot of visual stuff in there, costumes, architecture, all of those things which give it the color, which give it the essence of what it is. You have carriages that go clippity clop. You have coachmen. I mean, you have all the elements of a period piece. So that all should come into the description. And if it doesn't, then it's not as good as it should be. The Night Manager, for example, is a modern piece. It's set in lots of different places. And my recollection is that is one of the aspects that did work well. But again, there's a lot of stuff. There's the scenery is completely different. The vegetation is different. What people look like, who people are, identifying who they are when you don't know who they are, but you need to get an idea of who they are. These are all the aspects of AD that should be there. These are the things that should be picked up, because you should be effectively seeing the series without seeing it, but not missing out on all the visual elements that are there. It's detailed physical description and landscape description, and it's, yes, to give you a fuller picture, really.
So give me an example then of your method of working. Let's say you're about to do an episode of The Crown, for example,
Yeah.
and this is going to be 50 odd minutes, and you presumably get a script in advance, a post-production script of the episode. What's your
Not always.
what's your sequence to to viewing it and creating that AD and making sure that you're doing the best job that you can do? Why do you think you need to put as much effort into every single episode or film that you're doing?
What, rather than just kind of just
Yeah,
pop it off?
why not just do it in real time? I mean, it's 50 odd minutes. Why not just, say what you see on screen and let it
Well,
be
because that's
like
not
that?
because no, I've been doing this 30 years, and I couldn't possibly do that. I mean, you'd have to kill me first. No, I am. I mean, obviously, I always tell people who are starting out that they should watch an episode from the beginning to an end, because then you know what happens. Because then you're going to make intelligent decisions about what to describe. Because one of the restrictions of AD, of course, is that you don't have the time, like a novelist has as much time as they like to describe things fully. But in AD, you are restricted by the fact that you've got dialogue, you've got important sound effects, you've got music, and obviously, the conversation. So you've got to slot yourself in there in sometimes what is a very small gap. So if you then have a choice between describing somebody's hat or the fact that he pulls a knife out of out of his bag, that there's only, that's the one that you're going to have to go for. You have to make decisions which are crucial to the plot. There is a school of thought, which I don't know where it's come from, but that a describer shouldn't need to know anything about it, and that it's enough to say a man walks down the road. It's not. Of course, it's not. I mean, with The Crown, we're talking about the royal family, and we're talking about real people, admittedly, some of it fictionalized. So you've got to know. You've got to know all that, because otherwise you're going to be shortchanging the audience, aren't you?
Mm. So do you think that right now, is there potentially too much emphasis on creating as much AD content as can be created for anything on a TV schedule? Are there places where perhaps audio description is not warranted and maybe it could be put into more drama, or should everything be audio described and audio described to the best quality that it possibly can? Or do you think there is a point where you have to say there's no point in audio describing this program, but there is in another program?
People are discussing whether you should have them on quiz shows, news magazines, all those kind of things, which are very, very talky. I would rather they would spend twice as much time on a drama than to do some of those programs which don't really add value. The AD does not add value when you say she presses a button, or whatever it might be, because a lot of it is just very formulaic and you get into it. It's a bit like EastEnders, really. I mean, how much does one really need AD with a soap opera, which is pretty dialogue led? Whereas if it's a drama, you start with a blank page, and it's as good as you can, as the detail and everything else that you can put into it. So I'm definitely an advocate for saying less is more. I mean, it's just not the way that the broadcasters are looking at it. They want to be saying, yeah, look, we AD everything, but it's not. When we started, we realized that, there are some things like nature documentaries, drama, and film. They're the ones that really need it, because they're the ones where you can't kind of imagine it. You've got to be told. Whereas with a quiz show, it's all pretty much in there, isn't it?
If you're blind or visually impaired, this is an avenue that we should be looking into, because I'm correct in saying that there are very few practitioners of audio description who would reference somebody who may be blind or visually impaired to make sure that what they are writing and recording uh, sounds correct and is relevant and will be understood by the viewers.
I think the problem is because they're trying to have so much quantity that they don't give people time. And I think that a lot of because suddenly the volume has increased so much with the streamers and everything else, and I don't know where they're getting their describers from and how well they're being trained. Very few people have anything to do with blind people. I mean, I'm just for those of you, we must open this out to our invited guests. But everything I know from having done 3 years research with blind and partially sighted people. So I kind of know. But even now, I'll have something and I'll ring somebody. I have my bunch of friends, my bunch of visually impaired friends, and I say, listen, is this okay? Does this make sense? So I will always still confer. Most of the time, I know what I'm doing. I'm confident of that. But there are still moments when I'm thinking, what does that mean? Nobody does that in broadcasting. Nobody does that because they're told, this is an hour of drama. Can you do it? You've got to do it in a couple of hours. I mean, it's crazy the things that are being asked of people to do. So they're not going to spend deep hours thinking about it and doing it, which is why perhaps sometimes it's not as good as it should be.
Can I interject briefly and just say that the 2 of the 3 participants that I can see are nodding along with you, Veronica, just for Oran's benefit, because Oran can't see that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
That's good. Okay, well, let's move on to the next 2 questions so that we can get you guys involved. So I'm going to ask Clodagh to put up the first question, and these are, again, they're very simple questions, and if you don't want to answer in the poll, you can unmute and answer verbally if you wish. But basically, we just want to know here is, can you, or how much of the content that you watch, whether it's on streaming or TV, is audio described for yourselves? So is it, a quarter, or is it half, or is it all of the content that you like to watch is audio described? Or is it like 3/4, or just how much of it is audio described of the content that you do watch?
So you've got 1 vote for a quarter, 1 vote for a half, and 1 vote for 3/4.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Great. So I'm going to ask we're going to throw up the last question.
Sure. It's of the audio described content that you watch, how much would you say is good quality AD? And the options are none of it, approximately a quarter, approximately a half, approximately 3/4, or all of it.
So to me, and it sort of goes back to what Veronica was saying, which was the most important thing is to add value and then follow the story. And providing I can follow the story, everything else is secondary to that, as far as I'm concerned. And everything I've watched with AD, I've been able to follow the story. And then if there's sufficient time to get in extra information, it usually is squeezed in. The voice seems to complement the vast majority of the time what's going on. And that's good enough for me. I'd rather have that than and focused on the right things than anything else. Right. I may not have just come across a bad one yet.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, for example, Bridgerton for a second.
For me, I found the audio description too much. The question is how much is too much, how much is too little. I felt I was being overloaded in Bridgerton, and I know it must be very difficult for the audio describer to know how much is too much and how much is too little. But sometimes you do need to just get into the feeling of a film or a TV program. It was overloading me.
Can you give me an example?
With other TV programs, such as, I'll refer to The Night Manager and Missing You, because those are the other ones we're talking about.
Yeah.
I forget it's on. It's that good, the audio description. I even forget it's there. It's coming in at the right place. It's just telling me what I need to know. And I even forget it's there. Whereas with Bridgerton, I felt like that's all I could hear. I felt I couldn't even hear the character speaking because the audio description was just too much. He was every little tiny detail. And I'm thinking, I don't need every little tiny detail. I found that too much in Bridgerton. That's my opinion.
Veronica, when you were learning to audio describe and teaching yourself, how did you know how did you decide that that something was too much?
Well, I think, as I say, we did a lot of research and lots of examples and so on. So, I mean, I think it's quite instinctive that you know. By the way, the very first film that I ever described was Hear My Song, which was Irish.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Joseph Locke.
and there's a lot of dancing in it. I mean, there's, it's the feel. Can I do a lovely quote for you, which I just been to Germany, where they actually have an audio description award ceremony, amazingly enough, and have had it for 25 years. At the time that I've been doing it, actually, I should have moved to Germany. Anyway, they have a sweet motto, which is, you don't have to see a film to love it. And I think that's really
That's a lovely expression.
because it's kind of what you were saying, Tracy, about the other programs, about Night Manager, for example, that you don't know it's there. Most blind people that I know say the best description is the one that I don't notice, which means that it's so well written, it's so integrated into the action that actually you're just following, you're just in the program, you're in the film you're being told about, and you don't really realize that there's this, but he goes across the room, he goes out the door, suddenly you have this loud, strident voice, and you go, what? Stop that, stop. It doesn't fit the film. And if there's too much of it, like with Bridgerton, they seem to be incredibly keen with Bridgerton that every skin tone should be mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of American thing where you just never stop talking.
I can add to that. I can pick up on some of that. So to qualify, I watched all of the Night Manager series 1 and 2, and I found that AD perfect. So in relation to that, I watched the first few episodes of Bridgerton, and I will carry on watching. I want to know what happens, but I totally get the need that there was more audio description, and I just put it down to, if you compare those two series, there's lots of action in the Night Manager, there's lots of scope for adding AD in a softer way. You don't have to have so much. In fact, I thought the Night Manager was perfect. We'll come on to that. Bridgerton, yes, there was a lot of audio description. I think because also there was a lot of dialogue, it was constant talking. If you wanted to get a lot of AD in, you had to squeeze it in even more so. But I'll go back to my earlier point. The main thing is I need to follow the story. I could follow the story. So everything else is secondary. I didn't mind the extra AD. I didn't mind the constant talking. I don't know. Maybe I'm just okay with that. And some people are. Everybody's different. I wanted to know what the characters looked like, if you could. None of the dialogue was spoken over. And so I found it absolutely fine. The one thing I will say about because it was all new to me at the start, there were a lot of characters being thrown at me. And it was difficult then to know which character was which, because you haven't got the visual cues to match the character speaking.
Yeah, it's a differing opinion, which is great. Who else have we got to hear from?
Una
is here.
I haven't had a chance to watch the shows, unfortunately, but I would just like to say that I think hearing the different takes on the experience of it is so valuable to me, as somebody I don't write a lot for TV, but I do a lot for theatre and in person, but it is so valuable and so interesting to hear your experiences of it, so thank you for sharing.
Something just struck me. Like, if you go to theatre and you watch a live show, you get the pre-show notes, which describe the set in vast detail, and a lot of what the characters are wearing during the performance. It would be really valuable if the same was there for a TV series. So then maybe not everything needed to be described as much during the actual show.
That's a very interesting point, because I don't know if you've seen Trigger Point. Before the series started, One of the audio describer for the show actually write a synopsis for each character. And what they used to do is put up on the website or the social media channels. Each character would explain their character and what they looked like and their profile and their mannerisms and their personality and all that before the series actually started transmitting. And we have done that as well, where we've had several dramas where I've managed to get the actors themselves to stay in character and to give a brief description of themselves in character and personality and what they're like. The response that we've got for doing that sort of thing before a series has started has been very positive. Do you think we should be doing more of that?
Yes. Sorry, after you.
I was going to say, I think that would be, if it's doable, I think that would be very good. It works well in the theatre. Why could it not work on a TV program? For sure, it would take out a bit of that, like you were saying, in the actual program when it came on, because you'd know what the scenery was going to look like, you'd know what the costumes were going to look like, you'd know the colour of the skin of the people. Yeah, so I could see that working. Going back to Bridgerton, anywhere I feel I'm being bombarded with audio descriptions, sometimes I need to feel the mood. I might need to hear the birds singing. I might need to hear a fire crackling. And if I'm being bombarded by audio description, I'm not having the feeling as well, if that makes sense.
I'm sighted, and I always watch television or content with AD if it's available. And I really enjoy it mostly, but I find it interesting, especially with something like Bridgerton, because it's such a visual program. You know, the sets are amazing, the costumes are amazing, and the costumes tell a story in themselves. Same a lot of the time with The Crown and things like that. Like you get a lot of detail about a character by their hair even, and the costumes and that. And so I think that would really benefit from, when they're promoting the new series, they should put a link up or a QR code or some mild thing so that people can go to their YouTube channel and see all of that stuff. And I think that would be so valuable, because I get the overwhelm completely. But from a sighted point of view, sometimes I get frustrated because I feel like they describe the wrong thing, or they're missing a vital piece of information. They're giving you something that isn't so important.
I know it's not one that we're talking about this evening, but Veronica was talking about quiz shows.
Yeah.
The quiz show, is it 100 to 1? Is that the name of it? 100 to 1?
There is one, yeah.
Well, a lot of the clues are very visual.
Yeah.
And the audio describer is not reading out the clues. They're saying, the contestant's got dark hair and glasses and a blue jump. I'm thinking, no,
I don't care.
I want you to read the clue out to me. I want to try and answer the question. I don't need to know what the contestant looks like. And I get very frustrated with that. So there are some quiz programs where if it's a visual clue, I want that to be read to me.
Yeah, totally agree.
I've heard that before, actually, that the priorities, that's the problem, is that a lot of people don't know what the priority is. What's important in this situation? There are rules, but these rules are very, very malleable. I mean, something will apply to this program, but it won't apply to that program.
Yeah.
And you just have to take each one and the thinking takes time. I mean, these business of these intros, AI is coming along, and inevitably, but something like a description of the characters could well be done, maybe by AI or something when it comes along, because again, that takes time and money. It all comes down to time and money. Of course, it would be wonderful to be able to do a thumbnail sketch of each character, because you don't have time in the actual film. It's quite difficult with feature films, because obviously you'd have to get permission, and it would be quite complicated for them to grant you permission to write something independent. I mean, these film companies are quite neurotic about how you use their content, as they call it. But I think it would be a brilliant thing to have, because you'd have it in your head before you start watching. I try to put in description, I call it wraparound, so that if you've got a character, so you sort of, she scratches her curly hair, kind of, you don't say she has curly hair, you just kind of slightly build it in. You just put it in a little bit. And sort of subconsciously, if you like, that you try and write a description of somebody a bit subconsciously, so that you get a bit more about them than you would have without saying anything, but not too much. That's the thing. It's the balance. It's the balance of how much information. But I think AI will come into its own at some point, and such things like that might well be something that AI could be used for, or indeed for quizzes, because you don't need to be Shakespeare to do quizzes. Just describe the thing that Tracy wants to hear, the clues.
Sometimes it's common sense, isn't it? Going to another program, The Masked Singer. There was some audio description was very good, but one particular episode, the audio describer was talking all the time that the performer was even singing. I thought, the idea behind this is I'm supposed to be listening and trying to decide who's singing behind that mask. And I can't hear the person singing because you're telling me all about the costume and I get very frustrated sometimes.
Yeah, I deliberately, I watch it with the family and we don't have the audio description on because I don't think it adds
because
anything.
Of that reason. Yeah.
Which might go back round to my answer. Of those things I've watched, I find it all good, but some I don't watch because I know it won't work. So I don't put it on.
You come across many situations where you would turn off the audio description.
No, I don't think I've ever. But having said that, I don't think we've ever turned it off. Not during.
And the other side of that is to both of you. Would you decide not to watch a program if it didn't have audio description?
I've done that before when I can't remember what the last series was, but I wanted to watch it on Netflix or as a film, and it didn't have AD, so I just didn't bother to watch it. There's no point. And I was really disappointed that when I went on there was no AD. So, and that's happened. I mean, it does happen. I don't understand why this. The AD doesn't get transferred.
But I often watch television with my husband, who's fully sighted, so he will perhaps be my little audio describer and tell me little bits. But going back to a point of view from a fully sighted person, my husband sometimes finds the audio description useful because he'll say, Edward's walking down the street, and he'll say, "Oh, I forgot he was called Edward." He said, so he finds the audio description helpful, even as a fully sighted person sometimes.
And I would concur with that. My wife's fully sighted. And when we have the AD on, not only does that come up, but also it's the expressions. So-and-so frowned or smiled surreptitiously, or however you want to describe it. It adds to the plot and what they're thinking. And actually, sometimes even when you're watching it as a sighted person, you don't pick up on these nuances. So it actually adds to what's going on, which is interesting.
What about when it comes to facial expressions, like they're frowning or they look pensive or they've got shining eyes? I mean, can you identify with that?
Absolutely. It's really essential to follow in the story. And I did actually write some notes about the Night Manager. One of the things I wrote down was how good the AD of the facial expressions was throughout, and how that was critical to the development of the characters, the plot, the story, the narrative, how the protagonist and the antagonist were thinking and behaving. And it just seemed to match the story so well, and that really did help me follow the story.
I think this one might depend on somebody their level of sight loss and how long they've had their sight loss.
Yes,
I mean, my particular eye condition has been slow. As a child, I could read the blackboard at school, which I wouldn't be able to do now. So mine's slow deterioration throughout my life. So if somebody frowned or smiled, I know what a frown or a smile is. However, if somebody has been totally blind from birth and doesn't know what a smile or a frown is, I speak to some blind people that don't know colours. If I say something's red, they can't even picture what red is, and I'm trying to describe it as a hot colour. To somebody who's never had sight at all, that must be very difficult.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And when it comes to skin color, is that important to you as well?
If it's needed in the story. If the
Yes.
story needs that to tell the story, then yes. Otherwise, I don't need to know, really. Personally, I don't need to know. But are there some people out there that need to know their race is being presented? Maybe some people need to know that. I don't know. You're always going to get difference of opinion on that one, I think.
The trouble is, it's like gender politics. There's a lot of argument. There's an awful lot of argument about it. And I haven't seen this, Bridgerton. I saw the first one, but I couldn't believe why they were giving us a sort of Farrow and Ball color chart of everybody's skin color. And it was, as far as I was concerned, it was taking away from the actual story. This is us doing audio description. We're telling you this. Meanwhile, the characters are doing all the things that they're doing, and I find that kind of thing distracting. And I mean, I can see. I mean, I have discussions with black actors. I have a few friends who are black actors, and the whole thing is a bit muddled because on the one hand, people will say he's a black person. But other people won't. I mean, in America, they're so paranoid about it that they don't mention it. But then if this being black is a really essential part of that story, then surely you should. But then the people on the other side say, well, if you call somebody black, then you've got to call everybody white. And then it all becomes too much because the story is what I think. It's the story and the plot and what the director had in mind. And why do you go to the cinema? Why do you see a film? It's the big picture. Whereas I sometimes think that with AD and all the kind of tendencies of today, people get bogged down with these things. I mean, you've got to be consistent. A white woman walks through the door. You're in Derbyshire. So a white woman walks through the door. Yeah, but she would be, wouldn't she? I mean, it's there must be some, I think, assumptions which are safe to make.
I agree with some of that. Some I don't.
No, that's absolutely right. This is why we're discussing it.
This is why we're discussing it.
I think I totally get what you're saying. It goes back to the most important thing is if it's related to the story, you need to know. But once you start describing, you've got to describe everyone, or else it becomes very unfair. I don't think you should assume that somebody in Derby should be white.
If it just depends.
So this goes back to
it depends on the setting. Midsummer Murders, for example, not many
true.
non-whites in Midsummer Murders.
This is where it comes back. It would be useful to have a little character thumbnail, like you say, right at the start, so nobody would then have to worry about describing.
Well,
it.
Exactly.
People wanted to go and find out extra information. They could do. Part of me says I don't need to know, but part of me says if my eyes were better, that's the sort of thing I would notice. And then I think in Bridgerton, because it's set at a certain time, and it's getting a bit of historical perspective in there, I think possibly it is useful to say the skin colours. Often the servants and the maids were black, and the people of high privilege, the lords and ladies, were white.
Well, actually, it's not that. The Bridgerton turns things upside down.
Yeah,
your lords and ladies are black there.
Yeah,
and some of the servants are white. So
isn't that worth saying, though?
That's exactly what I'm going to say. It's exactly what I was going to say. So in that case, it's that the perspective slightly changed. So it's even more important to say the skin colours.
Have either of you, even if you like the audio description on the content you're watching or you don't like it, have you ever decided to get in contact with the broadcaster or the production company even, or the practitioner of the audio description to give them your views?
I haven't.
I haven't.
Probably I should. Yeah. Now you've put that thought in my head. Probably I should.
I mean, Vocalize have a really good web page now where you can add feedback if you go to their shows that they describe. I think part of the one would be, where do I contact? Who do I contact? Is it easy? Is it right in my face? Can I find the information? Is there an email? Is there, it's not obvious. And so if it's not obvious, probably not going to go there. I'm not even sure always that the AD always mentions who's describing
No, they don't.
and what
No.
company. So where you don't even know if you go via the production company or the TV channel if your message is going to get there anyhow. So that would be great if there was a process for doing that, but it has to be easy for someone with blindness to do that.
So do you think in the case of all shows, the audio describer should be mentioned? So credited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's an art form. It's not easy. And absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things I absolutely 100% believe, and even to John, is that the description's only as good as the person who does it. It's not a company thing. I mean, they may say these are our rules and this is how we like to do it, but actually it's not. It's like, you can teach someone to play football, but it's the footballer who's doing it. He's the one, she's the one responsible. And so some people are not as good as other people. So maybe it's just best to say Red B did it. So don't give a name. I think it's sad, because I think that when it's good, like I found out who did The Night Manager, and I contacted her and I said that, and I'm obviously very, very stern about AD, but I said that I thought it was one of the best that I'd heard in a long time, for the same reason as that it was just that it flowed so beautifully. I mean, there were things she could have added, but overall, I thought it worked really well, and I let her know, and she was very pleased to hear it from me. So I mean, I will always try and do that, because they're not all that good. People are fine, and then once in a while somebody's wonderful, and the wonderful ones need to know they're wonderful. Equally, there are a few people, and Oran probably would testify to that, whom you'd like to suggest that they do something else as a living, but
No names.
But how good would it have been if it had come from, say, our organisation, the Audio Description Association, to say there's a whole group of people here, not just me, there's a whole group of people here want to say how well done that was. Is that something going forward that we could do?
I think we should. I really think we should, because in the end it's going to be an email, whatever. I'm sure we should do that.
Not just the negative, not just the positives, maybe the negatives as well. Is there some way this organisation could approach these people to say this is done right, this is done wrong, or whatever? Maybe that's something to think about.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Yeah, a feedback link so that you could say what you liked or didn't like about, and we could get in contact with the actual the audio describer. That would be a very good idea, I think. Yeah.
But could you set up something like MS Forms where people could just submit what they've watched, series, episode, date, time, and what you liked or disliked about the audio description in certain categories, and then it would just automatically update and collate. So you could just pull it off at any time and see what people have been watching and what was good and what was bad.
Yeah, that would be a very good idea.
I would just say that from now on, when you listen, even if you've got a husband or you've got a wife, and you just say, look, you have a little notebook maybe, and just say, that was good. Oh, I didn't like that. Just something. Keep a record, because the trouble is it just goes. There's so much AD out there.
Yeah.
And then you've got to make a cup of tea, and then you've got friends coming, and it gets lost. But actually, getting it really good is important.
Before we stop recording, I want to say thank you very much to all of you for participating this evening. Fantastic. And thanks to Veronica and Clodagh. Really appreciate helping. And we will do the next ADAVI user group, which will be, I'll be talking to a lovely gentleman called James Flanagan on the 29th of April, and he'll be discussing with me audio description for live sports. So that's something to look forward to. But for now, I'd like to say again, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was lovely.